He thought switching to French would embarrass the poor waitress. He thought she'd stammer and beg for help. He thought he was the smartest person in the room. He was dead wrong. What she said in the next 30 seconds didn't just shut him up, it ended his career. The crystal chandeliers of Chateau Rouge cast dancing shadows across Emma Clark's worn face as she navigated between tables, her feet screaming in protest. Another Friday night in Chicago's most exclusive French restaurant. Another shift pretending her doctorate meant nothing. She caught a reflection in the gilded mirror near the bar. Dark circles beneath her eyes, concealer doing its best to hide the exhaustion. 28 years old, and she looked a decade older. The price of survival. For years ago, Emma had been untouchable, a rising star at Cambridge University. Her research on Renaissance French dialects had professors calling her a once-in-a-generation mind. She'd been writing her dissertation in a sunlit library in England, coffee growing cold beside stacks of ancient texts, when her phone shattered everything. "Emma, it's about your mom." Her aunt's voice had trembled across the ocean. "The accident, you need to come home." The drunk driver had killed her instantly. Her father, seated beside her, survived but barely. Michael Clark, the gentle high school teacher who'd sacrificed everything to send his daughter abroad, now lay in a coma that lasted 3 months. When he finally opened his eyes, the brain damage had stolen his words, his movement, his independence. Emma had boarded a plane within hours. She never went back. The medical bills arrived like an avalanche. Her father's insurance covered almost nothing. The rehabilitation center that could actually help him cost $9,000 monthly. Emma had drained her savings in 6 weeks. She'd sold her mother's jewelry, her own laptop, everything that wasn't nailed down. Academia couldn't save her. Adjunct professor positions paid poverty wages. She needed cash, fast and steady. So she traded her research notes for a server's apron, her lectures for reciting dinner specials to people who looked through her like glass. Table 7 now. Marcus, the floor manager, hissed as he passed. "VIP client. Don't screw this up, Clark." Emma grabbed a water pitcher, forcing her face into the mask of pleasant servitude she'd perfected. Smile, nod, be invisible. That was the job. She approached table 7, tucked in the corner with the best view of the Chicago skyline. The man sitting there made her stomach tighten instinctively. Blake Morrison. She recognized him from the credit card receipts and the whispered warnings from other servers. New tech money, the kind that thinks wealth equals intelligence. He wore his expensive suit-like armor, his Rolex positioned deliberately on the table to catch the light. Across from him sat a woman who looked like she wanted to disappear. Designer dress, perfect makeup, but her eyes were distant, defeated. Her name was Rachel, though Emma didn't know that yet. "Good evening," Emma said softly, her voice professionally warm. "Welcome to Chateau Rouge. I'm Emma and—" Blake didn't look up. He was examining his fork under the light, checking for spots like a man who lived to find fault. "Sparkling water," he interrupted, speaking to Fork, "and the reserve wine list. Not the tourist garbage you probably show most people." "Of course, sir." Emma kept her voice steady. "And make sure the glasses are actually clean this time," Blake added, loud enough for neighboring tables to hear. "Last time I was here, everything was covered in fingerprints. Hard to find competent staff these days, isn't it?" Rachel, the woman across from him, winced. "Blake, please." "What?" "I'm just being honest. You have to manage expectations, babe. Otherwise, they walk all over you." Emma felt heat rising in her chest, but forced it down. She needed this job. Her father's next payment was due in 5 days. She couldn't afford pride. "I'll personally ensure everything is perfect, sir," she said, turning away before her expression could betray her. As she walked toward the bar, her hands trembled slightly. Something about Blake Morrison felt dangerous. He had the look of a man who enjoyed cruelty, who needed to prove his superiority by crushing others. She had no idea how right she was. 20 minutes later, the tension at table 7 had become suffocating. Emma could feel it from across the room as she approached with her appetizers, the expensive plates balanced perfectly on her arm. Blake had been sending things back. First the wine, claiming it was oxidized when Emma knew it was flawless. Then the bread, too cold, Then the butter, too warm. Each rejection delivered with a smirk, performed for Rachel's benefit, though the woman looked increasingly uncomfortable. Your foie gras, Emma said, placing the plate gently in front of Blake. And the... Wait. Blake held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. He stared at the plate, then at Emma, his eyes traveling from her scuffed shoes to her tired face. This looks underwhelming. The foie gras was perfect. Emma had watched the chef plate herself. I apologize if it's not to your liking, sir. I can... You know what? Blake leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile playing at his lips. I'm bored with this English menu. It's so pedestrian. This is supposed to be a French restaurant, right? Yes, sir. Then let's see if you people actually know anything about French culture. He glanced at Rachel. Watch this, babe. You can always tell the quality of a place by the education of the staff. Emma's pulse quickened. She knew that tone. She'd heard it before from men like Blake, men who confuse cruelty with sophistication. Blake cleared his throat and switched to French. But it wasn't just French. He spoke in rapid, deliberately obscure phrases, mixing formal and archaic terms, his accent heavy and exaggerated. He was showing off, trying to confuse her. Listen carefully, little one, he said in French, his pronunciation clumsy. I want you to tell the chef I want the duck, but only if the skin is crispy like glass. And bring me another wine, something that doesn't taste like vinegar that you probably drink at home. Do you understand? Or am I speaking too fast for your simple mind? He sat back, arms crossed, waiting for the blank stare, waiting for her to stammer, to admit defeat, so he could roll his eyes and demand someone more qualified. Rachel looked down at her plate, humiliated on Emma's behalf. Blake, stop. Just order in English. No, no. Blake chuckled. This is basic stuff. If she works here, she should know. Look at her. She's completely lost. The restaurant noise faded into background static. Emma stood perfectly still, looking at Blake Morrison, a man who thought money bought intelligence, a man who probably couldn't find France on a map, but wielded a semester abroad like a weapon. She thought of the libraries at Cambridge, the seminars where she debated medieval French poetry with professors who'd forgotten more about language than Blake would ever know. She thought of her dissertation, gathering dust in a storage unit because she couldn't afford to keep her apartment. She thought of her father, lying in a facility bed, struggling to remember her name, and something inside her snapped. Emma didn't reach for a notepad. She didn't call for Marcus. She simply straightened her posture, lifted her chin, and locked eyes with Blake Morrison. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. Blake's smile began to falter. He'd expected confusion. He didn't expect the icy calm that settled over Emma's face. Then she spoke. The French that poured from Emma's mouth was like liquid silver, perfect Parisian dialect, enunciated with the precision of someone who'd spent years in academic halls defending complex arguments. Her tone was warm but devastating, the verbal equivalent of a surgeon's scalpel. Monsieur, she began, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet dining room. If you wish to use a subjunctive mood to impress me, I suggest you review your conjugations. Your request of the duck is noted, though comparing its skin to glass is a rather clumsy metaphor, typically found in poor 19th century poetry. Blake froze, his fork hovering in midair. His mouth fell open slightly. Emma wasn't finished. Emma turned her gaze to the rejected wine glass, her expression shifting to one polite, academic pity. She slowed her words, as if speaking to a child struggling with homework. As for the wine, she continued in flawless French, it is not vinegar. It is a 2016 Chateau Margaux. The acidity you detect is characteristic of young tannins, which require an educated palate to appreciate. If that proves too complex, I would be delighted to bring you a sweet Merlot, something simpler to match your level of understanding. The silence that followed was absolute. At the next table, an elderly woman lowered her wine glass slowly, her eyes wide. A businessman stopped mid-conversation, staring. Even the sommelier, halfway across the room, had frozen in place. Blake Morrison's face turned crimson. His brain scrambled to process what had just happened. The script had been flipped. He was supposed to be the master, she the servant. But in 30 seconds of perfect French, she had stripped him bare. He opened his mouth to respond, to shout, but he couldn't find the French words. Switching back to English now would be surrender. He'd started this game. He was losing badly. A sound broke the tension. A small, sharp laugh from Rachel. She covered her mouth immediately, eyes wide with shock at her own reaction. But it was too late. For the first time all evening, she was smiling. She looked at Emma with something close to wonder. "Aye, you." Blake sputtered. Emma switched back to English, her voice professionally pleasant. "I'll put in your order for the duck, sir, and I'll bring that Merlot. I think you'll find it much easier to swallow." She gave a small, precise nod to Rachel. "Mademoiselle." Then she turned and walked away, her head high, leaving Blake Morrison drowning in his own humiliation. Emma made it to the service corridor before her legs nearly gave out. She gripped the counter, her breath coming in short gasps. The adrenaline that had held her upright vanished like smoke. What have I done? The thought crashed through her mind like breaking glass. I just destroyed a VIP customer. I'm going to be fired. The apartment, Dad's medication, the facility payment. Clark. Marcus's voice cut through her panic. He appeared beside her, his face pale, eyes darting toward table 7 where Blake was furiously typing on his phone. "What did you say to him?" "He ordered in French," Emma whispered, her hand shaking. I responded in French. "I don't speak French, but I know the sound of an insult." Marcus ran a hand through his thinning hair. "That man is worth $200 million. He brings clients here constantly." "I didn't curse at him," Emma said. "I just corrected his grammar." Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Something flickered across his face, almost like admiration. Then fear extinguished it. "Go to the back. Polish silverware. Stay out of sight. If Morrison demands to see me..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Emma retreated to the kitchen, finding a corner near the dish station. She grabbed a polishing cloth and started working mechanically on forks, trying to calm her racing heart. She'd worked so hard to be invisible, to swallow her pride, to accept the disrespect, because survival mattered more than dignity. And in one moment of weakness, she'd thrown it all away. 15 minutes passed. The kitchen chaos swirled around her. Chefs shouting, pans clanging, steam rising in thick clouds. Then Kevin appeared. The teenage busboy looked terrified. "Emma," he whispered urgently. "Table 7. Mr. Morrison. He's asking for the manager." Emma's stomach dropped. "Okay, tell Marcus." "No, you don't understand." Kevin's voice cracked. "He's asking for you. He says you stole his credit card." The fork slipped from Emma's hand, clattering loudly against the steel table. "He what?" "He's saying he left his black card on the table when he went to the bathroom, and now it's missing. He says you're the only one who was near the table." Kevin's eyes were huge. "Emma, he's calling police." Emma felt the world tilt sideways. Theft, not just a fireable offense, a criminal record, which meant no job, which meant no apartment, which meant her father evicted from the facility within 30 days. Blake Morrison wasn't just trying to humiliate her anymore. He was trying to destroy her completely. "Where's Marcus?" Emma asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the terror flooding her veins. "He's out there trying to calm Morrison down." But Morrison's screaming. Everyone's recording it on their phones. Emma closed her eyes. If she hid in the kitchen, she looked guilty. If she went out there, she walked into an ambush. But hiding solved nothing. She retied her apron tighter. Battle armor. "I'm coming," she said. The dining room had transformed into a theater. Blake Morrison stood in the center like a performer, his face twisted in theatrical outrage, pointing an accusing finger at Marcus, who looked like he might faint. Rachel sat at the table, her head in her hands, looking mortified. "I want her arrested." Blake's voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "I leave my car on the table for 2 minutes, and the help decides to help herself. This place is a criminal operation." He spotted Emma emerging from the kitchen, His eyes lit up with predatory satisfaction. There she is. Blake pointed directly at her. The thief? Search her. She probably has it in her pocket right now. Every phone in the restaurant turned toward Emma. Every eye. The wealthy patrons, the tourists, the staff, all watching. Emma walked forward slowly. She didn't look at the cameras. She looked at Blake. "I did not take your car, Mr. Morrison," she said calmly. "And you know that." "Oh, I know it." Blake laughed harshly. "You're a waitress. You're desperate. I saw your shoes. I saw the way you looked at my watch. You people are all the same. You think the world owes you something because you failed at life." He stepped closer, invading her space. "Empty your pockets now, or the police strip-search you in the back of a squad car. Your choice, sweetheart." The room held its breath. Then a chair scraped loudly from the corner. An older gentleman stood from table 4, silver-haired, perhaps in his late 60s, wearing a warm but expensive tweed jacket. He'd been sitting quietly all evening, nursing a single cognac, watching. He walked toward them with the slow, terrifying authority of a man who commanded respect without demanding it. "That will be enough, Mr. Morrison," the man said. His voice was low, accented, and carried the weight of absolute certainty. Blake spun around. "Who the hell are you?" "Mind your own business, Grandpa." Blake looked around wildly. The crowd had turned. The disgust was palpable. "This service is terrible," Blake shouted, desperate to regain control. "Rachel, we're leaving." He grabbed for Rachel's arm. Rachel stood. She looked at Blake, then at Emma. "No," she said quietly. Blake froze. "What?" "I said no." Rachel's voice grew stronger. "I'm not going anywhere with you. You're a monster, Blake." "Rachel, get in the car now," Blake snarled, his mask of sophistication completely shattered. He looked dangerous. The older gentleman stepped smoothly between them. "The lady has made her choice. I suggest you leave." "You want to fight me, old man?" Blake's fists clenched. The gentleman smiled. It was a wolf smile. "I do not fight, Mr. Morrison. I make phone calls. Tell me, you work for Morrison Tech Ventures, correct?" "Yeah, I'm the CEO. What's it to you?" "I am Philippe Rousseau," the man said softly. The color didn't just drain from Blake's face. It evaporated. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Rousseau," Blake whispered. "As in Rousseau Holdings." "The same. We are the primary investor in the venture capital firm that funds your company. In fact, we hold approximately 70% of your debt." Philippe pulled a phone from his pocket. "I believe I will call my board in Paris. It's morning there. We should discuss calling in your loans. All of them. Tonight." "No." Blake's voice cracked. "No, please. That would bankrupt me. You can't do that over a dinner dispute." "I can do it because I do not trust my money with men who lack character," Philippe said calmly. He turned to Emma. "Mademoiselle, I apologize for this disturbance. Your analysis of the Margot was flawless. It does indeed require patience." To Blake, "Leave before I decide to buy your company and fire you from your own business." Blake looked around the room. No allies. No escape. Publicly destroyed by a man with real power. He fled, the heavy doors slamming behind him. The restaurant erupted in applause. But Emma barely heard it. She was staring at Philippe Rousseau. The name triggered something in her memory. The Rousseau Foundation, the largest funder of linguistic research in Europe. Philippe looked at her, his eyes twinkling with recognition. "You are Emma Clark, are you not? The one who wrote the paper on semantic evolution in Renaissance French dialects." Emma's breath caught. "You read my work?" "Read it." Philippe smiled. "My dear, I was on the committee preparing to offer you the Geneva Research Fellowship before you disappeared. I have been looking for you for 4 years. The library of the Rousseau Foundation in Chicago was a cathedral of knowledge. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating rows of ancient manuscripts. Emma sat at a mahogany desk, examining a 16th-century letter, wearing comfortable clothes and shoes that didn't hurt. "Dr. Clark?" Her assistant appeared at the door. "There's a visitor in the lobby. He says he knows you. He's in a wheelchair." Emma's heart leaped. She hurried down the hallway to the glass-walled entrance. There sat Michael Clark. The gray pallor was gone, replaced by a healthy color. He wore a clean flannel shirt. Beside him stood a nurse from St. Catherine's Neurological Institute, the facility Philippe had arranged. The best in the country, fully covered by the Foundation's insurance. "Dad," Emma said, approaching slowly, "is everything okay?" Michael looked at her. His eyes, once clouded with confusion, were clear and bright. He lifted his left hand and reached for hers. He took a deep breath. His mouth worked, muscles straining from months of intensive therapy. "Emma," he rasped. The word was rough, difficult, but unmistakable. Emma froze. The first time she'd heard her name from his lips in 4 years. "Dad," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Michael squeezed her hand. He looked around the beautiful lobby, at the books, at the life his daughter had reclaimed. Then back at her. "Proud," he said, the word coming easier. "So proud." Emma fell to her knees and wrapped her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. Not from exhaustion or fear this time, but from pure, overwhelming joy. She had her life back. She had her father back. And somewhere in Chicago, Blake Morrison was probably yelling at another server, forever chasing a sense of worth he'd never find. But Emma had something he could never buy: dignity, purpose, and words that would echo through history long after his money turned to dust.